What's up? I'm Drew Paul Bell, and in this video, what I want to talk about is a concept, something that I kind of noticed when I was in school, a trend that I think happens in the way that people think about architecture and design. All right, so going through school, I would be like working on my project, and I had my design kind of in a way. There was a way that I thought about it. Maybe I had a bunch of plans that I had been drawing these plans, and then I'd be talking to the professor, and the professor would have a great idea to be like, you know what, you keep designing this in plan, but I want to know what this building looks like in section. So draw a section and see how things work out, see if you have to move things around. And I would think, yeah, I'm gonna draw this in section. And it would be great advice. And so I would take that idea and then I would go draw it in section. I would realize certain things worked, certain things didn't work. I'd switch it up. And then I would use that tool, but what I would do is I would become fixated on that tool. I would fixate on that one piece of advice, thinking, oh, this is so great. This is like the piece of advice I needed. But there's never like one piece of advice that you need, right? If you get that one and you just cling to it, then you're still gonna stall out. You're just gonna stall out in this other direction. So that's what would happen to me. I would get stuck in like sections, right, for example. And I would see the same thing happen with other people. Maybe you realize, okay, I'm gonna do the models. And then you kind of get on to doing study models and quick models and stuff like that. And then you only do that, and then your building becomes more about just a form, and then the plan doesn't make any sense. Or, you know, what have you, right? The technique can be anything. It usually starts out as a really good piece of advice, but then there's this tendency when you get that good piece of advice to cling to it and just use it like it's going out of style, so to say. And then next thing you know, it's actually become kind of a crutch. And you got to be aware of this tendency, right? And so this happens at all stages of the design process. This happens a lot. So make sure that you don't fall victim to this. It's important to always understand all the different things at play that you have, all the different tools and the ways of looking at your idea in your head, right? Your design, your building. You have all these different ways of looking at it. And you can't become too fixated on one thing. More importantly than that, though, it's really about avoiding a term that I heard recently called tunneling. So that's when, say, for example, maybe you realize section is like the way that you need to design things in section. Then you almost like lock into a tunnel, right? That's all you can focus on, rather than being able to like remember, oh yeah, I gotta match up with the plan and the model, make sure that the whole image looks good, and also understand the way people flow through the building and how it relates to the street. And instead of doing all that, you kind of like, you're stuck, maybe you're confused, maybe you're stuck in a rut on doing the plan, then you hear a section and you're like, oh, it's section. And then it's like your focus is hyper-focused on one thing, and then it goes hyper-focused on something else instead. And then you don't have an awareness of the overall. In architecture is one of those arts where you have to be able to zoom into the details and also zoom back out and see the whole thing. So when you're designing, you can't just zoom in to one method of designing. You can't zoom into just the section, because then everything else is going to fall apart. You can't focus on just the plan, because then other things are going to lack. But instead, when you're designing, you need to kind of be in this dance, in this mode between all these different parts going on. And it takes an awareness that's not just a single focus, right? Don't think of it as like a single. I heard this analogy earlier this week. I thought it was brilliant. They said that your focus is kind of like a beam of light, all right? And that beam of light can be hyper-focused onto one little point, or it can be spread out and look at everything. But it's when you start toggling back and forth between like real fine focus and real big focus, that becomes easy to get distracted. Because maybe you'll be looking at the whole picture, and then you see one little thing you gotta focus on, and you just focus on that. And then you become tunnel vision, you get tunneled, or cognitive tunneling into that one little thing. So this happens in the design process a lot in school. In the profession, you need to be aware that this could happen in your designs. Maybe you have some change, maybe you make some change in the design, and you're like, oh, this is going to impact this thing. And so then you're like, well, how is this going to work? And then you start figuring out how the concrete curb is going to be underneath the decks to make sure that it can get supported. And then you're dealing with this right here, and you think you got it figured out, but you totally forget that on the other side of the building, now you have a different condition there too, right? And so your focus, while toggling from real wide to real tiny, shifts to one thing, it kind of latches onto the first thing it can find, and it doesn't, and you get locked in on that. It's like tunneling. And now you're stuck on this one little thing, and you forget to zoom out and look at what else is there. So in school, you gotta practice doing this, practice avoiding this problem within your process. But you also need to work on this within the thing that you're actually focusing on, right, within your building, right? So sometimes you might make a change, and then your mind wants something to latch onto. And you have to go ahead and tackle that, see what that is, see why your mind is chasing after that one thing, but don't ever forget that you have to step back and think about, is this really the only thing that's important right now? Okay, so I hope that this helped you. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. This idea is one that I was inspired by, there's a chapter in a book called Smarter, Faster, Better. This book right here by Charles Duhigg. And I have mentioned a book by him before called The Power of Habit. And I haven't even finished this book yet, but this book looks like it's a great book. So I highly recommend this one, as well as the other one. I did a video on that, so I'm gonna link that up here. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you enjoyed it. I hope this helps, and I'll talk to you next time.